In 2009, Austin Chumlee Russell walked onto television screens as a joke most people didn't take seriously. He was laughed at, underestimated, and often treated like the weak link inside a family business built on sharp instincts and ruthless deals. But while everyone was busy laughing, Chumlee was quietly building something else. A life shaped by loss, mistakes, and patience. One that would eventually leave him standing above the very people who once doubted him. The boy who was never supposed to win. Long before cameras arrived at the gold and silver pawn shop, Austin Lee Russell was already there, quietly learning the rhythms of a business that would define his life. Born and raised in Henderson, Nevada, Chumlee didn't grow up dreaming of fame or fortune. His world was small, familiar, and deeply shaped by friendship. As a child, he formed a close bond with Corey "Big Hoss" Harrison, the son of Rick Harrison. That friendship placed him inside the orbit of the pawn shop years before television would turn it into a global attraction. Chumlee earned his nickname at 12 when his father joked that his round face and prominent chin resembled the walrus character from the animated series Tennessee Tuxedo. The name stuck, and over time, it became more than a nickname. It became an identity, one that would later be exaggerated, mocked, and monetized by reality television. But in those early years, there was nothing performative about Chumlee. He was simply a kid who spent long hours around the shop, absorbing conversations, watching deals unfold, and learning how objects carried hidden value. At 21, Chumlee officially began working at the gold and silver pawn shop. His job wasn't glamorous. He tested items, wrote purchase tickets, and handled behind-the-counter tasks that never made headlines. There were no cameras, no audience laughter, no scripted moments, just routine, repetition, and responsibility. These years mattered more than most people realize because they shaped Chumlee's understanding of risk, accountability, and how costly a single mistake could be. One of the most expensive lessons came before Pawn Stars ever existed. A customer pawned a rare upright bass for a modest loan. While the instrument was in the shop's care, Chumlee leaned it against a shelf and walked away. The bass fell, shattered, and was ruined beyond repair. What seemed like a careless accident turned into a financial disaster when the shop learned how rare the instrument truly was. They were forced to pay roughly $20,000 to compensate the owner. Chumlee had no defense, no excuse. All he could say later was that he didn't know what he had been thinking. That moment followed him quietly for years. It reinforced how others inside the shop viewed him, not as malicious or lazy, but as unreliable. The kid who meant well, but couldn't always be trusted. It was a reputation that would later become central to his television persona. But at the time, it was just a painful reminder that mistakes had consequences. Then came 2009. After years of rejection from networks, the History Channel finally approved a show centered on the pawn shop. When production began, Chumlee wasn't guaranteed a spot on screen. There were multiple employees competing for attention, and nothing about him screamed breakout star. What he had instead was comfort. He was himself around Corey. He wasn't intimidated by Rick, and he didn't freeze when cameras were present. When Pawn Stars premiered, Chumlee was introduced to the world as comic relief. He fumbled facts, annoyed his bosses, sided with customers, and became the punchline of countless jokes. Viewers laughed easily. Few looked deeper. Even fewer imagined that the same man would one day become the wealthiest figure associated with the show, not through luck, but through endurance. At the same time the show launched, Chumlee was dealing with something far heavier than public ridicule. Just weeks before the series premiered, his father died after battling pancreatic cancer. The timing was cruel. As Chumlee's face became recognizable across America, he was privately grieving a loss that would reshape his relationship with money, health, and time. Among his father's belongings were handmade wooden items, objects that carried no market price but immense personal value. They were the one thing Chumlee said he would never pawn, no matter how desperate things became. Laughed at, but never broke. As Pawn Stars settled into its rhythm, Chumlee's role became increasingly clear. He was the one viewers laughed at, the easy contrast to Rick Harrison's authority and Corey's ambition. Inside the shop, he was teased relentlessly. On screen, he was labeled careless, slow, and impulsive. Even his own bosses joked that he lacked the instincts needed to survive in a business built on negotiation and skepticism. Over time, the nickname Village Idiot followed him from the shop floor into popular culture. But what the audience rarely saw was how carefully Chumlee played his position. He didn't fight the jokes. He didn't demand respect. He absorbed it all, knowing that attention, no matter how unflattering, was still currency. While Rick focused on margins and Corey chased validation, Chumlee became something far more valuable to television, recognizable. Fans didn't just remember him, they rooted for him. They defended him online. They showed up hoping to see him behind the counter. That popularity didn't come from strategy, it came from authenticity. Chumlee didn't pretend to be sharper than he was. He didn't posture. He made mistakes openly, laughed at himself, and let others underestimate him. The irony was that beneath the jokes, he was quietly building expertise in areas no one else bothered to master. Vintage pinball machines, classic toys, video games, collectibles dismissed by traditional pawnbrokers but treasured by a growing fan base. Moments of clarity slipped through the cracks of comedy. There were episodes where Chumlee identified rare pinball machines with precision, repaired gas-powered toys no one else could fix, and spotted counterfeit sneakers that fooled experienced dealers. These weren't flukes. They were glimpses of a man who understood niches and how underestimating niche markets was often a costly mistake. Yet the narrative never shifted. Chumlee remained the punchline. And that narrative followed him off-camera, too. Merchants questioned his intelligence. Critics dismissed his success as accidental. Even within the shop, he was rarely trusted with high-risk deals. The perception stuck, entertaining but not essential. What few people understood was how exhausting that position can be. Being underestimated doesn't just limit opportunity, it isolates. Chumlee was surrounded by people, yet often alone in how he processed the weight of expectation. His father's death lingered quietly in the background, shaping how he viewed stability and loss. Watching success arrive without respect created a strange tension. He was visible everywhere, but taken seriously nowhere. That tension eventually forced a decision. Chumlee realized that if he stayed dependent on the shop and the show, his image would always belong to someone else. He would always be the joke written by producers, reinforced by editing, and recycled season after season. If he wanted control, he needed something the cameras couldn't take away. So he moved deliberately, not loudly. He launched his own company focused on novelty merchandise. Items tied directly to his image, t-shirts, accessories, branded humor that leaned into how the audience already saw him. It wasn't an attempt to change perception. It was an attempt to profit from it. The response shocked everyone. Orders poured in faster than expected. Fans didn't just want to watch Chumlee, they wanted to own a piece of him. His merchandise began outperforming those associated with other cast members. What started as a side hustle quickly became a serious operation, one that required infrastructure beyond what Chumlee could manage alone. Money didn't save him, it exposed him. As Chumlee's income quietly grew, his personal life began to unravel in ways that cameras never fully captured. The money arrived faster than emotional stability. Appearances paid well. Merchandise sales climbed. His salary from the show became consistent. For the first time in his life, financial fear was replaced by financial excess. And with that shift came a dangerous illusion that success could outrun grief. The death of his father never truly faded. It settled into his body, his habits, and his health. Chumlee's weight became the most visible symptom. He ballooned past 300 pounds, moving through life with the kind of physical exhaustion that mirrors emotional collapse. Food became comfort. Routine disappeared. Fame insulated him from consequences, but not from pain. Inside the shop, the jokes continued. Outside of it, expectations multiplied. Chumlee was recognized everywhere, yet understood by few. The persona that made him famous began to trap him. He was expected to be funny, careless, and harmless, even when he was struggling. Admitting vulnerability didn't fit the character the audience loved. By the mid-2000s, the cracks were impossible to hide. In early March, everything collapsed at once. A police raid on Chumlee's Las Vegas home revealed drugs, firearms, and a private space that instantly fueled speculation about a darker lifestyle. Headlines moved faster than facts. The phrase sexual assault investigation dominated coverage, even though formal charges were never filed. The damage was immediate and brutal. The lovable image built over years vanished overnight. Sponsors hesitated. Viewers questioned everything they thought they knew. For the first time, Chumlee wasn't being laughed at, he was being judged. Legally, the situation narrowed. He faced multiple drug and weapons charges, eventually pleading guilty to a felony weapons charge in exchange for probation and counseling. It wasn't a triumphant ending. It was survival. The deal allowed him to avoid prison, but it left a permanent mark. Redemption would no longer be automatic. This was the moment money stopped being protection. Wealth couldn't shield him from reputation collapse. Fame couldn't rewrite the narrative. What he had built was suddenly fragile. What followed was quiet. No dramatic press tour. No emotional interviews. Chumlee withdrew, recalibrated, and focused on control over his body, his habits, and his future. He began exercising obsessively, reshaping his diet, cutting out excess, and confronting the reality that his health might fail him before his career ever did. Still, discipline alone wasn't enough. His weight fluctuated violently, rising and falling as stress tightened its grip. Eventually, he made a decision that mirrored the seriousness of his situation. He underwent gastric sleeve surgery, permanently altering his body to survive what his mind could not manage alone. The procedure forced limits where willpower had failed. At the same time, Chumlee restructured his income. He stopped relying solely on the show. He invested deliberately. He sold property at a profit. He expanded his candy business across from the pawn shop, turning foot traffic into predictable revenue. These weren't flashy moves. They were defensive ones, choices made by someone who had already lost everything once and refused to do it again. The quiet collapse. No one noticed. By the time Chumlee appeared stable again on television, his personal life was already slipping out of frame. In 2019, he married Olivia Rademan in a private ceremony in Hawaii. To the outside world, it looked like a reset, a new chapter, proof that the chaos was behind him. But stability for Chumlee had never been something that lasted without effort. The marriage unfolded mostly away from cameras. Olivia pursued her own path while Chumlee remained anchored in Las Vegas, filming the show that had defined his identity for over a decade. Distance crept in slowly, disguised as patience. Travel became routine. Silence became normal. By 2020, fans noticed something strange. Photos disappeared. Public affection vanished. There were no announcements, no statements, no closure, just absence. Just what followed wasn't a public breakup. It was something quieter and more painful, a slow erasure. They remained connected online for a time, but the relationship existed only in traces. Chumlee acknowledged how difficult the separation was without explaining it. He didn't assign blame. He didn't rewrite history. He simply absorbed another loss without spectacle. At the same time, his health remained fragile. A hospital visit for breathing issues served as another warning that survival required vigilance, not confidence. He had already learned how fast life could collapse. Now he lived like someone who expected it to happen again. And yet, beneath the emotional isolation, something unexpected was taking shape. While Rick Harrison focused on the shop and Corey chased recognition as an heir to a legacy, Chumlee did the opposite. He stopped competing for relevance. He stopped trying to prove intelligence. He stopped chasing approval. Instead, he diversified. His candy store became more than a novelty. Located directly across from the pawn shop, it converted tourists into customers without relying on screen time. Foot traffic became revenue. Branding became infrastructure. Meanwhile, his merchandise continued to generate income long after episodes aired. His salary from the show, paid per episode, stacked quietly, season after season. He made a critical decision that separated him from the rest of the cast. He treated fame as temporary, not permanent. When he sold his Las Vegas home for a profit, it wasn't about downsizing. It was about liquidity, control, flexibility. He learned to exit positions instead of clinging to them. When the joke ended, he was still standing. There was no single headline announcing that Chumlee had surpassed everyone else. No dramatic reveal, no moment of triumph on screen. The realization arrived slowly, almost uncomfortably, through numbers rather than applause. Season after season, his per-episode salary accumulated quietly. Merchandise continued selling long after trends faded. His candy store generated steady, predictable income. Property decisions paid off. While others relied almost entirely on the show, Chumlee didn't. That difference mattered. Rick Harrison remained the face of authority, but authority is expensive to maintain. Corey carried the pressure of inheritance and expectation, tied emotionally and financially to a legacy he didn't build alone. Chumlee, by contrast, carried none of that weight. He had no throne to protect, no image of dominance to uphold. His freedom was structural. What made his rise tragic wasn't envy, it was irony. The man presented as the least capable had built the most adaptable life. He didn't need to be the smartest voice in the room. He only needed to survive longer than the room itself, but winning this way came with a cost. Chumlee's wealth didn't bring vindication. It didn't erase the years of ridicule. It didn't restore what had been lost. His father, his marriage, his health at its peak. Financial success didn't rewrite memory. It simply made silence more noticeable. Do you think Chumlee was underestimated on purpose? Or did he turn being overlooked into his greatest advantage? Let us know what you think in the comments, and if this story surprised you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold stories behind famous faces.